Reaching for the Bottom of the World by Brendan Bozeman. I heaved another shovelful of dirt onto the edge of the hole, then reached down and scraped a rock out with my bare hands. That went up into the pile too. My dad appeared in front of the sun and said, "What you doing, Cooter?" It wasn't a bad question. I was only supposed to plant a bush the neighbors had dropped off. "I'm digging to the bottom of the world." What I really meant was that I was digging to the other side of the world. My dad laughed and said, "Now that's what I call reaching for the stars." He put his beer on the edge of the hole, twisting it so it would stay steady, and walked away. I took a swig and kept on digging. Soon I weakened. My head could still peek over the edge of the hole. I climbed out, finished the beer, Schlitz, and went inside. Dad was watching TV. I sat next to him and leaned against his chest. "What did you mean by the bottom of the world? You're supposed to say you're digging to China. There's no bottom of the world." "I don't know," I said. "Don't you think there would be lava? What's going to happen when you get upside down?" I didn't have an answer, and I could feel my eyes closing. "I forgot to plant the tree." "Son, you need a nap," he said, stroking my hair. It was sweaty, and mud clung to it. "Forget the bush. You want me to carry you to bed?" "No." I could hear his heartbeat and breathing and felt his shirt move as he occasionally lifted his beer. The TV sounds faded away. I woke up lying flat on the couch with my dad holding a bowl of mac and cheese out for me as he sat on the coffee table. I sat up and went to rub my eyes, but he held my hand back. "You're all dirty, Coot. That'll get in your eyes." He had a damp washcloth and rubbed my hands clean. I took the bowl and had a bite. "Come on over to the table so we can eat like civilized people." We went into the kitchen, and I sat kitty-corner to him at the table, which was pushed against the wall. My dad always had a couple of jokes, and while I didn't always understand them, they made me laugh. It was mostly the way he said it. Also, he told me about people who came in to buy cars. Sometimes he had to talk to them for hours. I tried to think of a riddle, but I couldn't think of one. "Mrs. Franklin had a riddle yesterday," I said, "but I can't remember it." I hit myself in the forehead. "Do you mean today?" "I guess so. You'll need a bath, but first I just want you to answer some questions and sign something." "Dad." I was smiling because it was the millionth time he had said the same thing. He was talking about my homework, but he was a car salesman, and that's what he always said at the end of a deal. He always told me, "You aren't done until you have the signature." "I'll do it," I said. "No, really, I did your homework for you, but I want you to answer the questions out loud and put your name on the paper." "What's 5 plus 5? 10. What's 9 minus 2? 2. No, 7. We went through the sheet, and he said, "It just needs your John Hancock right there, and it can go in your bag." I put my name on it, put the paper in my bag, and then went to the bathroom, where my father was drawing the water. He got some boats out of the vanity. "I don't want boats. That's for little kids." All right, he said in his slight Virginia accent. "Didn't know I was talking to a grown man." I laughed. "Now, don't drown, and when you're ready, come on out and we'll watch The Simpsons. They're on in 25 minutes. That's when the big hand is here," he said, tapping the 6 on the wall clock. I kept my eye on the clock. I finished up by the 5, then ran to get my pajamas on and dive onto my father's lap just as the show started. And that was kind of a typical day. When I went to bed, we blessed our relatives, and especially Mommy. The next day, my dad walked me down to the bus stop. He would have let me go myself, but the school said anyone under 6th grade had to go with a parent. I felt dumb walking with him. I went all over the neighborhood by myself every day. but everyone else's mom was there. He talked to them with his hands stuffed all the way in his pockets. He wasn't nervous mostly, but with the moms, he always seemed like he couldn't wait to go home. They always asked him questions about me. That day was different because another mom and dad were there with a boy no one had ever seen before. His name was Billy. They said they had just moved in at Miss Millie's back cottage. She was Billy's aunt. Billy was also in first grade, so they introduced him to me and we said hi. We sat together on the bus. The bus driver, Buck, was supposed to walk him into class, but I told him that he was in the first grade with me and I could take him there no problem, and Buck said okay. He said that was better because he'd have to park the bus and then take Billy in, which would be stupid. He didn't know why a teacher didn't come down to the bus. You won't lose him, will you? Of course not. He seemed nice. When we got to school, Mrs. Franklin was upset Buck hadn't taken him in, but said, "At least you're here now. Cooter can be your guide until you learn your way around." I don't know why she said that, because I was already his guide. Morning was normal. I forget, but at the end of the day, Mrs. Franklin said our project for the week was to think of what we wanted to do when we grew up. We could talk to our parents about it, and when she said that, she put her hand on my shoulder. I pulled away. She was always giving me special treatment, like giving me new pencils or helping me with my work before everyone else. I don't know how to describe her face, but it was always sorry. She gave out a piece of paper to us all and explained it. We would fill in the questions and draw a picture of us in the future. She came and asked me if I understood it. "Yes, Mrs. Franklin," I mumbled. On the way home, Billy told me why he was there. His dad got laid off, so they had to move. "He got a new job?" "Not yet. He said we couldn't afford to stay." "That's too bad. Want to come to my house?" "I'll ask my mom." She had to take him home that day, but she said we could play another time. I walked home with Mrs. Melbourne. Usually my dad wasn't home by then, so she helped out. She lived right next door, and she was pretty nice. She would give me a snack and didn't ask me things like why I looked out the window instead of at the TV. For some reason, I wasn't allowed to play outside until he was home. I sat near Tess, her daughter, on the couch while she watched TV. I didn't know her too well. She was older and didn't like kids too much, but she was my babysitter sometimes. She was blonde and kind of big for the 5th grade. She always watched this really boring show. I can't even remember what it was. I think it was a talk show. It was a fat black lady. I heard my dad's car and ran out. Finally, I could relax. He said, squinting at the paper at the kitchen table. "Well, what do you want to be when you grow up?" "A car salesman. I want to be exactly like you." "Thank you, son, but you sure about that? There's lots of things you can do. There's lots of ways to make real money." "I hadn't thought about that. I think you should go to college." My eyes widened. "What's college?" "You do that after high school, which is after 8th grade. He looked at me and started giggling. "The point is, then you can do anything. I mean, you can still do anything if you don't go, but you have more choices that way. Why is Mrs. Franklin asking you to write about this?" "I don't know." "Why don't you just say you want to be a fireman or a policeman like everybody else?" "I already told you." "How about an MLB player or something?" "You can't be a sports star because everybody wants to be a sports star." "Tell her you want to go to college and then decide. Uncle Jim went to college. You make more money if you go to college." "But Uncle Jim doesn't do anything." "Sure he does. It just doesn't look like it. He sells computer programs." "He sells computers?" "He sells computer programs." "What do they look like?" "They don't look like anything. They just tell the computer what to do. You type them, beep, boop, beep." He moved his fingers in the air as if he was typing. "Are they free?" Why would they be free? Because they're just there. Somebody has to make them. Mrs. Franklin says some things are just there. Cooter, nothing is just there. What are you talking about? If it's something everybody needs, it should just be there. Cooter, is she turning you into a communist? What's a communist? He put his fingers on his brow and said, Nothing. Just let me see that sheet. Okay. You can put car salesman. I think you'll be okay answering these. I started rubbing my eyes like I was tired. Not this time, bud. You have to do this yourself. But you can ask me questions about it. God knows I know about selling cars. Weren't you a bus driver before? You do not want to be a bus driver. Why not? You don't get paid anything. Nothing? Not nothing, just not a lot. Cooter, you better get started. The Simpsons is on at the 6. He got up to wash the dishes. I didn't have any questions for him. The next day, Billy came over to my house. His mother said it was okay. Then Mrs. Melbourne said we could go over to my house if we were together. What's this bush doing here? He said. I'm trying to plant it. I'll finish it this weekend. I ran inside to get a mini football, and we threw it back and forth. After a while, it went under the house, and he reached under to get it. After he threw the ball back, he turned and bent to look at something. What are these? Wheels. Oh, yeah, this is a trailer. I never saw the wheels up close. Do you drive around in it a lot? It never moves. Billy straightened up. I had a real house. This house is real. Let's go inside. We went in and sat on the sofa. Then we went back out to play. My dad got home after a while and played with us. Long day, he said to me. Same old, same old. You? Santa Claus came in to buy a car. His wife looked like George Washington. They had a pig on a leash. I blinked at him slowly. Well, did you make the sale? That's what I like to hear, my boy. That's what I like to hear. It turned out everybody liked Billy. He wore this huge parka the first day, even though it wasn't cold, but he offered for us to use it as home plate at recess. That was pretty neat because when you slid in, it got tangled around your legs. Tander was a catcher, and one time, he wouldn't admit that he had missed Tom as he slid in, and Tom put the jacket over his head. Tanner's face was all covered in dust. We sort of got in trouble for using his jacket. Mrs. Franklin came over to yell at him, but to everyone's surprise, Billy just hugged her, and she rubbed his head. She took the jacket inside and cleaned it up for him. Everyone gathered around Billy. Mrs. Franklin would never do that for me, said Husky. Husky was a big, tall kid and always thought everybody else got special treatment. That was kind of true because he got yelled at a lot. He wasn't that nice to Mrs. Franklin, and she always had to tell him to say please and thank you. I asked Billy why he had hugged Mrs. Franklin. My dad says you just hug women and they stop being mad, said Billy. That works, I said. Not with my mom. She knows what I'm up to if I try that. It works with other women, like Mrs. Franklin. But Mrs. Franklin isn't like really a woman. What do you mean? She's a teacher. She's still a woman. It works with all of them. Husky broke into the conversation. Why are you here, anyway? My dad got fired. What did he do? I took over for Billy. He didn't do anything. He just got laid off. So where do you live? Husky was still looking at Billy, even though I was answering. At Miss Millie's cottage. That's his aunt. Billy at Miss Millie's. Why did you have to move? He kept looking at Billy. He lost his house, I said. How do you lose a house? Everybody ignored that. Husky was the worst idiot anyone knew. I grabbed Billy's arm to turn him away, but Husky broke in again. You going to stay a long time? Said Husky. Billy spoke for himself. I think so. It's kind of small, though. What is your dad going to do if he doesn't get a job? Tom said, Tom said, "He'll get a new job. Maybe my dad can get him one. He's a mechanic." "Then let's start the game before Mrs. Franklin comes back," I said. The group broke up and went back to their positions. We were just using a wiffle ball. No real baseballs allowed in the playground. On Friday, I got a prize for the best report in the class. We read them aloud, and mine was the longest, but I think she gave me the star because she always gave me special treatment. "Those were very interesting stories," she said. "The picture is wonderful." It was a drawing of my dad in front of a car, facing a customer. The customer was handing him a huge stack of bills, and my dad was saying, "This is the best decision you've ever made." Billy said he was going to be a police officer. Tom was going to be a race car driver. Husky wanted to be a businessman. That's all I remember except Timmy. He wanted to be a paleontologist. I only remember because Mrs. Franklin put that on the spelling list for the next week. Husky punched him. The next day, on Saturday, Uncle Jim and Aunt Susie came over for a barbecue. I had Billy over too. My dad and Jim stood around the barbecue and made burgers. Jim and Susie had 2 daughters, so me and Billy just hung out. We went over to the bush. "It's going to die, you know," said Billy. "I know. I'm going to put it in tomorrow." We played soldiers around the bush, using sticks for soldiers. Then we got my squirt guns and ran around shooting each other. My dad kept saying to stay away from the barbecue. Aunt Susie asked to talk to me in the trailer. She introduced her girls to Billy and then took me inside. "Everything okay?" said my dad. "I just want to see his wonderful school report," said Susie. She took me inside and I went to get the report. She said it was great and stuff. Then she started asking me a lot of questions. She asked about school, about the trailer, Dad, what we do, all these things. After a while, my dad put his hand on the door jamb and leaned in. "Everything okay?" "It's fine," Aunt Susie said. "We'll be right out." I really wanted to get back outside. I don't know what it was. I just thought she was asking a lot of questions. I suddenly hugged her. "Thanks, Aunt Susie. You're the best." She was flustered, so she hugged me back. Then I got up and ran right under my dad's arm to get outside. I went over and got Billy. We went out behind the trailer, past some scrub bushes, and up to a wire fence that separated us from the forest. "Hey, Billy, that worked." I hugged Aunt Susie and got right out of there. "See? But why did you want to leave?" "I don't know. She had all these questions. It was kind of like when you get yelled at school." We stayed out there until the burgers and stuff were ready. My dad was at the end of the table, a plastic table outside, and I sat to his right and made sure Billy sat next to me. Jim and Susie were across from me, and the girls were at the other end of the table. We said grace and ate. It was sort of normal, except that Susie kept asking my dad questions now. When do I go to bed? When do we eat? All these random things. She seemed nervous or something. Then things went bad. My dad was drinking a Schlitz, and he put it down right in front of my plate. I had a cup with Coke, but it was empty, and right about then I got one of those dry mouthfuls of a burger. I hadn't put enough ketchup on, so I grabbed the beer and sloshed some of it into my mouth to loosen it up. Susie stood up. "You see what I mean?" she hissed at Tom. "He lets him drink beer. How can you let a first grader drink beer?" She grabbed the bottle out of my hand and jostled the table so stuff fell over and rolled around. Then everybody was standing up, and Jim took Susie away behind the trailer. She was really mad, and you could hear them talking. My dad and the girls were cleaning up, and I snuck into the trailer. I went to the window and back and spied. I couldn't really understand what they said, but Jim was always holding her up her arms and saying, "Shush." But she was saying that my dad wasn't responsible and wasn't fit to raise me. That much I did understand. She said my mom should have divorced him, and then none of this would have happened. Jim kept saying everything was fine and it was none of her business. But she was really mad and wouldn't stop. So Jim went out front and told my dad they were going home, and the girls got in the car. Then he convinced Susie to get in. Before he left, Jim came over to my dad and said he was sorry and that it wouldn't happen again. I never actually saw Susie again after that. Billy was just sitting there at the table. I felt bad for him and sat down. Then my dad sat down and we finished dinner. It was actually pretty fun with everybody else gone. Billy's dad came to pick him up after a while. He was a nice guy, really tall and big. He and my dad had a beer together, and then he and Billy went home. Me and my dad tidied everything up. He was kind of quiet. Usually he told jokes, like I said, but this time we just cleaned up and went inside and watched some TV. The good thing is that after a while, he shut off the TV and said, "I almost forgot. It's slapjack time." We played slapjack every Saturday. It was the only thing that absolutely, definitely happened the same way every week, no matter what. Maybe you don't know how to play, but it's easy. You just flip cards onto a pile, and if there's a jack, you slap it. The first one gets the cards, and then you keep playing until someone has them all. As we played, my dad told me that if anyone came over and asked questions, just to make sure I didn't say anything bad. People had come before. They asked me all these questions about my dad and stuff. It was just like what Susie was asking, that what we did and did I get hungry at night. He tried to get me to memorize some things to say to them, but I couldn't remember more than 3 words. I'd say, "My dad is," and then forget. Cooter, don't worry about the lines. You did fine the last time. Just make sure you talk about playing cards and doing homework and stuff like that, and that's it. Don't tell them any stories, and for God's sake, please don't start using your imagination. I won't. Because you tell good stories, but sometimes people won't know if they're true or not, and they'll twist everything you say into something you didn't mean. I know. So just don't talk too much, and don't ask them any questions either. They'll turn them around on you. You got it, my good man? Okay, Dad. We got through a few games, and I was sipping at my dad's beer as we played. He started winning. Then he started telling stories about the customers. This time it was about a guy who really did not want a car. "What you do then," he said, "is you talk to the wife. You get the guy to sit in the driver's seat, and then you walk around the car with the wife and get her interested in it. If she wants it, she'll get it." Okay. But that guy knew exactly what I was doing. He jumped right out and came running up to us like we were robbing the cookie jar. That was a tough one. "Did you make the sale?" I made the sale, and I made it the same way I always do in the end. I was honest with him and gave him a fair deal. That's really the bottom line. You know Rick, right? Rick? You don't know him, but I've talked about him. Oh, yeah. He always tries to fool the customer. Sometimes it works, but at the end of the month, I always have better sales totals, and that's even with coming home early to see you. "You don't have to come home. I can stay with Tess." "Oh, that's nice of you, son, but I know that's a long wait with her. Plus, I want to be with my son. Son? Got it, son?" He played a hand. "That's just like Husky," I said. "What's like Husky? Who's Husky?" "He's at school. You remember." "I don't, but continue." "He wanted to be a businessman, but he's too pushy like Rick." "Oh. Yeah, he'll have to change that, but you never know if he'll turn around. Mommy would say to give him another chance." "Yeah, but I don't know with Husky. He thought you can't lose a house." My dad looked down at his cards. Well, he's wrong about that. Then he told a story about one guy who was so nervous he couldn't even hold the pen when it was time to sign. He had to keep reminding him how happy he'd be with a new car. He got up and went to the fridge. Last one, he said. You finish that one, and I'll drink this one. There was a little left in mine. It almost went up to the bottom of the label. We kept playing. For some reason, I asked, why don't we get a PlayStation? My dad sat back in the kitchen chair he had pulled up across from me at the coffee table and said, do you know what those cost? Like $10 or $100? $4 billion. We can't afford it. We kept playing. I started winning again. Well, I said. Well, what, son? Well, I'm sure we can come up with a financing plan that will work for both of us. My dad laughed so hard it almost broke my eardrums, and he pushed back on the hind legs of his chair and fell over. Oh, God damn it, I guess you are going to be a car salesman. I'd never seen him laugh like that. A few days later, my dad came home and said, I got a new job. He was going to sell computer programs with Uncle Jim. What? I was upset. It's a good idea. I'll make more money. Maybe we can get that PlayStation. But I actually started tearing up. I wasn't sure why at first, but I found out when I said, but Jim flies all over and is always away. Son. You don't think I thought of that? I told him no travel. No overnight travel. I believed him, but I was still scared. It was weird. I'll just make my sales over the phone, I told him. That's it. No travel. You can travel. It's okay. No. But I've got a riddle. What do you call a deer with no eyes? No idea, Dad. I know that one. What do you call a trailer with no wheels? I looked around. I give up. A house. I stared at him. Maybe we'll move into a real house. What do you think about that? I don't want to move. Okay, we'll see. Just think about it. It won't be for a while anyway, but I bet your old man is going to be pretty good at selling programs. You could sell ice to an Eskimo. That's my boy. My dad gave me an ice cream sandwich he had gotten from the store. He decided it was time to plant the bush once and for all. It's almost dead, he said. It's kind of now or never. I had dug down so much he had to shovel a lot of dirt back in just to get the bush to the right height. Sorry about that, Dad. No, Cooter, this is good. You're supposed to dig extra deep before you plant a bush, so it has soft soil to grow in. He took the netting off the bulb and put it in. I shoveled the rest of the dirt while he got the hose. We gave it a good watering. Then we went in so I could take a bath and Dad could make some mac and cheese. We should eat by the 3, so we're ready for the Simpsons at the 6, he said. When I sat down to dinner, he put a beer next to his plate and said, What color is a cloud? White, I said right away. What color is a piece of paper? White. What color is the snow? Don't say yellow. I giggled. White. What does a cow drink? Milk. No, he doesn't. He drinks water like you. He held out a glass of water he had hidden in his other hand under the table. No more beer. We talked about a few things. So, what's the project this week? Favorite animal and why? What do you want? Polar bear. Why? Because it's white. My dad shook his head. You are just too clever for me, Coot. We ate for a little while. By the way, he said, those people who came to ask questions a long time ago, we won't be seeing them. All you have to do is make sure you don't get in any fights or tell any crazy stories at school. I slouched down and let my head fall back against the back of the chair, sighing, my mouth agape. I rolled my eyes toward him. I think I can do that. I was so relieved I thought I would crap my pants.